My name is Herold and I'm the plant pathologist from PGRO. This presentation is about disease management in legume crops. It will introduce common diseases in field beans, combining peas and vining peas, their symptoms, risk factors for disease development, and management options. I will start with diseases in beans. Downy mildew is a foliar disease of beans. It is characterized by pale lesions on the upper side of the leaves, which are covered in gray mycelium on the underside of the leaves. Spring beans are generally more likely to be impacted by downy mildew than winter beans. Symptoms usually appear from early May in periods of cooler and wet weather, and severe infection can result in up to 30% of yield loss. The descriptive lists for spring and winter beans include ratings for downy mildew. Varieties with a rating of 7 or higher are best suited for high-risk areas. PGRO advises to spray when disease is present on 25% of plants. One of the most damaging diseases in beans is chocolate spot. Chocolate spot usually occurs from May onwards, and winter beans are more prone to disease development than spring beans. Chocolate-colored, small, round lesions appear on leaves which can, if left uncontrolled, merge and the necrotic areas then cover large areas of the leaves. Yield impacts of up to 50% have been seen. Risk for disease development is greatest in early sown winter beans with high plant density. The associated microclimate is very conducive for chocolate spot development. Beans grown in the west and the north of the country are at greater risk. Chocolate spot control is essential if cool and wet weather is forecast during flowering. The best spray timing to protect yield is at mid-flower, which coincides with first pods, and several actives provide good control of chocolate spot. A very damaging late-season disease in beans is rust. Infection starts in periods of warm days and humid nights, usually from June to July onwards. Risk for disease development is greatest in warm summers, and control is essential if disease develops before the pods are filled. Several actives for rust control are available, and these should be applied at late flower. So in summary, fungicide timings in beans are: spray for downy mildew when disease is present on 25% of plants. Spray for chocolate spot at first pod, and 3 to 4 weeks later for rust. Information on approved products can be found on the PGRO Agronomy app, available via pgro.org. Foot rot is a soil-borne disease that is caused by a pathogen complex infecting roots. Infected plants show blackened stem bases and roots, and their water and nutrient uptakes are reduced. The risk of disease development is greatest on heavy soils, in close rotations, and in fields with poor soil structure. Compaction, waterlogging greatly increase risk. Weak seedlings and crops sown into cold soils are more prone to disease establishment. The only foot rot management option is lengthening rotations. This summarizes the most prevalent diseases in beans, but other diseases such as ascochyta, cercospora, or sclerotinia also occur. The next part of the presentation will cover disease management in peas. The potentially most damaging disease in peas is foot rot. Foot rot is a soil-borne disease that is caused by a pathogen complex comprising of 3 pathogens: Fusarium solani, Didymena pinodella, and Aphanomyces eutyches. The pathogens infect roots, which compromises water and nutrient uptake. Early symptoms of infection include an upwards yellowing of the foliage, followed by wilting. Severe infections can stun plants and even lead to plant death. Potential yield losses are high, and complete crop losses can occur in heavily infected fields. The risk of disease development is greatest on heavy soils, in fields with poor soil structure, and in close rotations. Compaction and waterlogging greatly increase risk, plus anything else that causes stress in plants can help the disease to establish. The healthier the soil, the lower the risk, and we will provide a separate presentation on using cover crops in pea rotations to improve soil health. Since foot rot is soil-borne, using fields without or low pathogen presence is an important management tool. PGRO offers a soil test that determines the levels of pathogens in soils and gives an associated risk of infection for each of the pathogens and an overall risk for the field. Using this test will help growers to avoid fields with a high risk of disease development and associated yield losses. We recommend to sample fields in the autumn prior to planting peas at the latest, and to sample randomly a minimum of 25 locations per field to depths of about 20 centimeters. Send the soils to the PGRO seed lab requesting a foot rot test. The only other foot rot management option is lengthening rotations. Primary infection of downy mildew is caused by soil-borne spores, and infected plants are stunted and covered in gray mycelium. Disease spread begins in primary infected seedlings, which are providing the source for secondary infection by airborne spores. Secondary infection is characterized by lesions covered in gray mycelium on the underside of pea leaves. Early sown crops, especially close to the coast, in cold soils with a field history of downy mildew, are at greatest risk. The descriptive lists for combining peas and vining peas include tolerance ratings for downy mildew. Varieties with a rating of 7 or higher are best suited for higher risk areas. Botrytis and sclerotinia are diseases in peas whose development is strongly weather dependent and, in the case of sclerotinia, whether other host crops are grown in the same rotation. If the weather is wet during petal fall, disease risk is present. Approved fungicides are protective only, and PGRO recommends to spray at first pot if wet weather is forecast. Several active ingredients are approved for control and can be found in the PGRO agronomy app and the vining pea technical updates. Powdery mildew is a late-season disease in peas. Infected plants are covered in white mycelium, which impairs photosynthetic activity and also affects operator health and machinery in vining peas. Risk for disease development is greatest in late-sown crops from July onwards in periods of warm days and humid nights. Varietal differences for powdery mildew susceptibility exist and can also be found in the descriptive lists. This summarizes the most prevalent diseases in peas. Other diseases, such as ascochyta leaf and pod spot or Pythium damping off, also occur. More information on the topics covered in this presentation can be found on the PGRO website at www.pgro.org.